Welcome to Make It Last, helping you keep your legal ducks in a row and your nest egg secure, with your host, Victor Medina, an estate planning and elder law attorney and certified financial planner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Make It Last. I am your host, Victor Medina. Geez, that music always gets me excited to talk to you. I'm just thrilled. This is the fall season. The fall season is my favorite season. So if you're listening to this in the podcast way later, it's like November. And it is a nice, cool, crisp November. I love this season. I love getting ready for Thanksgiving, and I'd love to host Thanksgiving. One of my favorite things to do is cook about 5-6 of the dishes. Here's the one dish I don't cook, which is the turkey. I'm no good at the turkey. I leave the turkey to somebody else, but all the side dishes I'm pretty good at, and I like cooking those. So I'm in negotiations now with my wife to try to figure out if we're going to host, if we're going to go to somebody else's house, but I hope we get to host because I love staying home, love watching the parade, love cooking for most of the day, love having family over, and then last but not least, I like watching football. Anyway, it's a good season for me. This is going to be a good show for you. I've got two topics I want to cover. One is a concept called affinity fraud, and a lot of people are familiar with identity fraud, but this is affinity fraud, and we're going to cover that today. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is top 401k mistakes. More and more people are making mistakes when it comes to their 401k, how much they invest, when they invest, what they invest in, when they come out of it, why they might come out of it. And I'm going to introduce a novel concept about, why your retirement vehicles may want to include things beyond your 401k. And so we're going to kind of go through that and talk about some taxes. So put on your thinking caps and stay with me as we go over that. But the first segment I want to go over with you is affinity fraud. Now, affinity fraud, if you look up the definition, it's basically it's referring to investment scams that prey upon members of identifiable groups. So you could be part of a religious or an ethnic community. You could be part of the elderly. It's part of the affinity fraud, or the kinds of professional groups. And so the people who perpetrate this often are members of the groups. It's one of the ways to get in with them and get all of the confidence that you need in order to scam people out of stuff. And I remember the first time I was sort of exposed to this. I was pretty young. I was in the middle of law school, and I was a teaching assistant to new law school students. It was probably my second or third year, and I was meeting with one of the members of my team that I was teaching. Because what happens, they would have a professor and they would have these teaching assistants, and they would kind of break out, and we would tear up their writing. We would teach them how to think and how to write. In any event, I was meeting with this gentleman, and he was actually very proficient in sign language. And in addition to that, he spent some time being an advocate for deaf people. It started when he was in college. I think he was dating a deaf woman. And so one of the things he taught me, though, is that the deaf community, deaf people, are often very suspicious about people who are good at sign language, because the culture is such that that's how they get preyed upon. And so if they, they're relying on people who can sign to speak for them. A person who is vision impaired can still hold a conversation even though they can't see you. And they know that what is being said to them, if it's in their native language, is exactly what they can understand. When someone is serving as a translator, the deaf community doesn't know if what they're translating to them is correct or not. And so they have trust issues around that. Fast forward about 15 years, a little bit longer than that, and I have a set of deaf clients. And they always meet with their daughter, and they always, they've grown to trust me. But in the beginning of it, they only trusted their daughter to have conversations with me and interpret what our advice is. Since then, they have taken to just meeting with me one-on-one, and they've grown to understand what I'm saying, and so we don't often meet with the daughter, every once in a while. But the point was that I saw that reinforced the lesson that I got very early with the student that I was mentoring. And so I've always been kind of keen to the idea that people who perpetrate frauds like this are often coming in as members of the community as though they were the most trustworthy of folks. Now, the scam levels actually vary There are some things that are just out and out scams that are like pyramid or Ponzi schemes. There was a special on HBO that went over the devastating effects of multi-level marketing, the MLM stuff. And one of the things they were highlighting is that most of the people that are being scammed by one of the ones that deals with like herbal supplements is the Hispanic community, and it's done by people who can speak Spanish, and they go down, and so sometimes they're just pure scams. But there are slightly less. What's the word I'm thinking of? There's some slightly less obvious scams that are going on. And those ones are the ones that I want to raise to your attention, because I'm not saying that everyone can avoid the scam stuff. I don't know how to prevent that except to kind of surround yourself with people that you know and are trustworthy and things like that. So I have that. I have that sort of like top level that I'm worried about. And the one that I get mostly concerned about that isn't as obvious is the affinity scams that have to do with investments. So one of the things I kind of want to raise for you is this idea that people are creating investments around affinities, and they're probably not the best thing to be latching onto. Okay, so one of them that I saw had to do with a new investment fund. And there are different ones. You got mutual funds. You have these things called ETFs, all right? And they're electronic transfer funds. And they're kind of a form of mutual funds. But most people think of ETFs as being following an index. So you can get like an S&P ETF. But one of the ones that I saw recently was actually something that was related to biblically responsible investing. So BRI. An ETF was essentially just trying to get you to invest in this ETF, put your money there, because I don't know, you latched on to the idea that biblically responsible investing was a good thing to do. I mean, I can't really figure it out except to say that they are preying upon your desire, your affinity with wanting to be a good religious citizen. I mean, that's basically what it is. And so they promise the world. It's an ETF that talks about how they're going to invest morally and still not lose any of the performance potential, and they're not going to invest in immoral and anti-biblical activities. And the point is this. I guess this is where I get a little, what I want to talk to you about is that, following your feeling and emotion about an investment is never a good decision. Just not. Investing requires cold calculation and no emotion whatsoever. And you don't go by feeling, and you don't chase the good feeling that comes from being with a, whatever they're calling it, biblically responsible investing fund. You just don't. That's not the way that you invest. Now, look, you can have moral objections to certain kinds of investments, and some of the funds that we offer might fall under the area of socially responsible investing. That's maybe a little bit easier, but we do talk about how it will sacrifice performance because you're not including some things that will just, by their very nature, follow the trends. But in this case, this biblically responsible investing is doing nothing other than preying on someone's belief that what you invest in should match your conscience, and then on top of that, parking the money with them without kind of any more due diligence off of it. And sometimes advisors can help you avoid this kind of stuff. I really haven't had too many clients come in and say this is what they want to do, but I have seen this come across the radar more and more, and whether it's an affinity with a particular culture or an affinity with religious beliefs or something other, we've got to stay vigilant on this stuff and make sure that we leave emotion out of the investment that we're doing. So, would you look at that? I went long on this segment. All right, we're going to go a little shorter on the next two. And when we come back, we're going to talk about top 401k mistakes. I want you to pay attention to that. So listen to the commercial, but also grab yourself a piece of paper and a pen, and we'll return with Make It Last, where we're going to cover top 401k mistakes. Be right back.
As you get older, there are so many decisions to make around your legal, financial, and tax planning needs. Searching for the right people who you can trust and getting them all on the same page can be frustrating and exhausting. Turns out, now there's a better way. Medina Law Group is the only place where you can secure your total wealth with a one-stop shop for your estate, retirement, and tax planning needs. With over 15 years of experience and more financial credentials than you can shake a stick at, Victor Medina and his team offer a way to cover all of your planning needs under one roof. Whether you're concerned about getting your ducks in a row or securing your nest egg or both, Medina Law Group can give you the peace of mind you deserve to make sure you have all the angles covered with best-in-class planning. Call the experienced professionals at Medina Law Group at 609-818-0068 to learn more, including your chance to schedule a free consultation. You can also visit MedinaLawGroup.com to learn more about protecting your assets and the Medina Law Group team. For peace of mind and a solid foundation, contact Medina Law Group today.
Okay, welcome back to Make It Last. This is going to be two segments, or these are going to be two segments. I'm going to talk about top 401k mistakes. I'm going to cover 4 mistakes in segment 2. I'm going to give you a brand new idea in segment 3, and probably one that you haven't heard from other advisors. So I'm going to need your thinking caps for that one in segment 3. But let's go over the first ones when we talk about sort of the top mistakes for existing 401ks. Now, the number one mistake that I see in the 401k is treating it like a play fund to do your investing and to follow trends. So you might put this under the category of trading too much. Okay, that's the top number one mistake that I see. And I always love when I get to use family members as examples on this show. And the family member here is my delightful mother-in-law. Now, my delightful mother-in-law had her 401k, and she had things that she chose to invest in. And then what she would do at the end of the month is she would check which funds were doing well, and then she would move her money into those funds. So she was the definition of track record investing and kind of chasing that kind of performance. And she was shocked that her account value didn't grow at all. And since we took it over, her account value did what the market said it was going to do, and it kind of went up because that's what's going up now. But the point was that we didn't lose any momentum because of the trading that went on. And it's all kinds of research that has been done. It's showed time and time again that trading in and out of securities is a bad idea. First of all, you will never be able to time the market correctly, and you will incur unnecessary trading fees, kind of going out, in and out. I mean, if I wanted to be facetious about it, the time that you spent trading your 401k, you probably would have made more money if you had trained to be a better employee and gotten another bonus. Okay, so the first 20 years, parts of your career, getting promoted and getting paid is where the real money is at. And you want to avoid investing in stuff just because it's a track record. Don't invest too much. Now, the other flip side of that coin, though, is that you don't want to be overbalanced. So when you create a diversified portfolio, well, let's go to mistake number 2. Mistake number 2 is lack of diversification. Okay. Now, this is sometimes part of trading too much, but people will chase after certain performance, and what they will have is an unbalanced portfolio. So any particular segment is doing well at a time, and we don't know how long that's going to last. And the one that's not doing well almost never gets the attention and time that they need with money that's been invested in there and percentages and things like that. But the truth of the matter is that if you have a diversified portfolio, what I say to people, it's always having to apologize for something. There's something in there that you have to apologize for because it's not doing well. And it also means that you're never doing as well as your neighbor down the street because they're invested totally in the thing that is doing great, right? But the lack of diversification is best thought of as pistons in an engine. At no time are all 8 pistons firing at the same time. The engine doesn't move forward. Car doesn't move forward when we do that. And the reason why we have multiple asset categories is so that things that go down will eventually come up, the things that go up will eventually come down. And so we want to own all of the asset classes that we can. And then there are some models that you can follow to make sure that you are represented in each one of those asset classes correctly, depending on your risk tolerance. So you're going to own some of this and some of that and some of the other. And then that's diversification. So we see as an error that there's a lack of diversification often. People will own a target date fund, which is by its definition diversified and with some goal about when it's going to mature. But then they'll also buy other funds, typically the ones that are doing well because their track record investing and chasing that money. Well, that ends up throwing their investments off balance. Now, I'm not telling you that you ought to own a target date fund solely. Many of them are not properly constituted. Many of them are not represented in certain asset classes. So there's nothing that we can say about them universally. But if we have a diversified portfolio, we want to stay diversified. And so part of the first mistake, we talked about trading too much, there are times where you are going to want to rebalance. And rebalancing is essentially selling the thing that is high to buy more of the thing that is low. Okay, so that you get back into the ratios that you want. So if you had put down, well, I want 20, 30, 10, 10, 10 in certain funds. When those 20s and 30s go up to 30 and 40, you want to sell some of that off so you get back to 20, 30, 10, 10, 10. And the reason why you want to do that is first, you're committed to a long-term investment and diversification is the right thing to go do. But the second reason you want to do that is that those things that are 10 that are low, that you're buying cheap, are eventually going to come up. And so you want to buy them cheap so that you can ride that roller coaster up. And that's one of the reasons why we want to keep that in balance. Now, you don't want to be doing that too often. And there's all kinds of mathematical theories behind tolerance levels because stocks are going to vary up and down, up and down, up and down, and they're going to vary widely. Well, just because it's up today doesn't mean necessarily that we're going to sell it. Okay, so we got to have tolerances that we will withstand before we are out of tolerance and need to sell something. But the idea generally is that you want to stay diversified. Become diversified, stay diversified with your investments. Now, the third mistake is investing in expensive or active funds. Usually they're married together, that active funds are expensive. But sometimes we just have expensive funds because we have expensive funds. We have expensive funds because they pay the advisor an extra fee that you don't know about. All kinds of reasons why we can have expense ratios. And one of the things that we do, if you're interested in our services, is we will assess your portfolio and do kind of like an MRI of it so that you can see what your fund expense ratios are and whether or not you're diversified. And we've got a software tool that does that. And it pulls all the expense ratios from these published documents with the SEC, and we're able to very clearly say this is how much you're paying for your investments. And one of the reasons you want to avoid doing that is that expensive investments create an enormous drag on your money. And so I'm going to use an example. Stick with me because I know it can get confusing when I use numbers over the radio and you're not seeing what's going on. But if you have an investment that's, say, $10,000 and it's going to grow for 7% a year over 10 years, let's just say that those are the averages. If you're paying 1.44% for your investments, which, by the way, is an average that has been concluded by Dalbar, which is this objective research place. So if you're paying 1.44 for your investments, at the end of 10 years, you keep 73% of your money. 76% of your money. I give this talk a lot. I just get the numbers mixed up. Anyway, 76% of your money, and 23% of it went to fees. Okay? So a quarter of it went to fees, generally. If you have an expense ratio, which is closer to a third of a percent, 0.33, which, by the way, is the most expensive balanced portfolio that we implement. If you have that, then you keep 93% of your money, and only 7% goes to fees over the course of the 10 years. So there's a 20% swing on that, 20% swing. And that is enormous. I mean, that's only over a 10-year period. If you extrapolate that out to 20 or 30 years, then the amount of money that you're able to keep by not having this boat anchor around your investments with all of these expensive fee options will really catapult your retirement. So you want to look up the expense ratios. One of the services that we perform for our clients is, sometimes we're managing their money directly. Many times they're still participants in a 401k. And being participants of a 401k, they're essentially, captive. They can't move that money out at all. So we will, in fact, give them a portfolio that's probably the least offensive thing that we can put together. And we'll do that routinely. But what I find is that often 401k options just stink. they're not great investments. And we have to kind of really engineer a decent portfolio and then try to get that stuff out as soon as possible. And we have some tricks that we can do to kind of move them out for a married couple. But that gets into a little more sophisticated planning. But some people want it. We get to a point where it's look at, this portfolio is no good. Do we want to do something different with it? We're going to have to do some legal and financial magic to make that happen. But we can move it out of the 401k and get it invested properly. And many clients choose to do that. So the last one also has to do with a drag on your investments. And the last mistake is borrowing from your 401k. Now, the reason why this is a mistake is, I can understand that people are hard up for some money, and it can look like that 401k is a bank that you can borrow from, assuming that you don't incur penalties for doing so. But the real thing that I want you to avoid is the lost time of growth during the period in which you've made the loan or taken that loan out from the 401k. This is a strategy, 401k, investing in a 401k is a strategy that you are implementing for tax-deferred growth so that you have a nest egg that is available to you when you retire. And your company is likely matching some portion of it, which is great. We want to make sure that we're getting our matching. But it is helping you grow your money faster than you could grow it alone. And part of the magic in making that money grow is to leave it alone. If you borrow from it for any length of time, because nobody knows when the top days or bottom days of the investment market are going to be in any period. But if you borrow from it, you are going to lose out on the growth that money could have made, which, when kind of extrapolated out over time, will severely impact your investments. There are all kinds of reports. Just look up online, missing the top 10 days, just the top 10 days of the last 30 years. And if you miss out the top 10 days, what you own at the end is a fraction of what you would have been if you had actually owned it at those times. So we don't want to borrow from our 401k. We don't want to make we've got to figure out another way to meet that expense. But this is a strategy that will serve you in retirement, and no one's going to let you borrow money to retire. So this is your nest egg. And we need to act like adults, little big boys and girls, and we need to leave that money alone. All right. When we come back, I'm going to cover one secret strategy that may appeal to you. It may appeal to you, and I'm going to try to make the case for why you should consider it, especially if you're concerned about income taxes in the end. So stick with us. When we come back on Make It Last, I'll give you the last final mistake in the most original idea that we have for retirement and 401ks, and we'll do that when we come back.
Just about every working American stays focused on the ultimate goal, retirement. But planning for it can come with a lot of uncertainty. Do I have adequate savings? Have I invested enough? Have I invested too much? What's the right thing to do? If you're one of the millions of Americans asking these questions, let financial expert Victor Medina help you make sense of it all. Victor is a certified financial planner and retirement income specialist who can help you set the strategy with a unique planning process that centers on you. By taking an in-depth look at your retirement timeline, goals you want to achieve, and what you have saved, Victor and his staff can help you figure out how to get the most out of retirement. Retirement is the biggest financial decision you will make. Putting the right plan in place and sticking to it is the smartest decision anyone can ever make. To learn more, visit Private Client Capital Group online at privateclientcapitalgroup.com and start down the path of securing your total wealth today.
All right, welcome back to Make It Last. I'm just not being a very good radio show host because I went long on both of those segments, and we have left a very little bit of time for the most original idea that I have with respect to 401k and how to avoid mistakes. So I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as I can, but it is a rather sophisticated idea. So stick with me as we go through it, and if you need more information, don't hesitate to contact us, and we can see if we can send you some different illustrations on what we're talking about. But so here's the thing, right? 401ks basically are a way for you to make contributions to your retirement that are tax deductible when you make them, and the growth is tax deferred. But they come with one compromise with the federal government, which is that when you take that money out, it is taxable, right? So you got all this tax deferred growth, and you avoided paying taxes on that money on the return, but when you take it out, it's all taxable. Now, here's the thing. That money that you're putting aside is not money you need to live on. You are actually paying taxes on all the money that you need to live on because those are your wages. By definition, they are the things that you didn't save or deduct. And you're at one tax bracket. For most people, when they retire, they're going to remain at a very similar tax bracket. The reason for that is that Social Security is not going to make up the bulk of what they need to live on. And so they're going to need to take money out of their 401k to make up the difference. So if they're going to receive, $30,000, $40,000 worth of Social Security benefits, they're probably going to have to take out another $80,000 or $90,000 a year to continue to live on to maintain a similar quality of life, especially in the beginning parts of their retirement. So that money that's taxable when it comes out is going to pay taxes at about the same rate as the taxes when they came in. Now, there's a tremendous benefit to a 401k in which you get a match because you get free money. That is fantastic. So when you contribute to your 401k, regardless of the tax deductibility of your contributions, getting free money from your employer is definitely something that you want to do. But many people would benefit from controlling their income taxes in retirement. And so if you look at an investment like a Roth account, right? Roth account are not made tax deductible contributions, but the tax growth is tax deferred and the distributions are tax free. So if you don't have options to, and by the way, there's limitations on when you can contribute to a Roth. Most people are limited to $5,500 a year if they're even eligible. So if you can't make contributions to a Roth, what are you left with? Something that will give you at least 2 out of the 3 benefits that I've been talking about: tax-deductible contributions, tax-deferred growth, and tax-free distributions. We want a couple of those. Well, one of the things that you can do is invest in indexed universal life insurance policy. Now, before you shut off and you're listening, okay, life insurance in and of itself is not a dirty word. In fact, life insurance is pretty much things that people get all the time. They exist. You have a group insurance policy. You have a life insurance policy that might be part of a death benefit when you have a pension. So why couldn't we use this in order to help us with retirement? And it might be more beneficial to plow some money into an indexed universal life insurance program because it gives us 2 out of the 3 benefits with none of the limitations of the Roth. And the 2 benefits that it gives you is that the growth is tax deferred and the distributions are tax free, whether you take those distributions during your lifetime or you leave them as a life insurance death benefit. And unlike a Roth, you can contribute money into an indexed universal life insurance policy with no limitations. Now, the one trade-off, of course, is that you pay taxes on that money. So this is after tax contributions, but if you contribute that money in, all of the growth is tax deferred. If you left it in an investment account, you would pay taxes on that later. So there is a good benefit to investing in one of these things. And so to illustrate that, with only a few seconds left in today's show, I'm just going to have you think about this. Consider a farmer in one state being told that there's a 10% tax on the value of the seed that they're planting. And another farmer in a neighboring state is taxed 10% on the value of all the harvested grain. Now, if you were a farmer, which state would you rather live in? The seed money is the money that you're putting in the indexed universal life insurance policy now, and it is taxed. But the harvest at retirement may be able to be taken tax-free. On the other hand, the 401k or other qualified plan may not be taxed now before the assets grow, but all of that money at retirement is taxed at ordinary income rates. Okay? And so it may be more beneficial to think about doing that. Now, I'm out of time for the show today, but if you're interested in learning more about this, don't hesitate to contact our office and we can help you illustrate the benefits to contributing to a 401k over and above the amount that gives you a match, or thinking about this as an option as well. We can kind of talk about both of those things. Well, the time went by very, very quickly. I want to thank you for joining us here on Make It Last, where we help you keep your legal ducks in a row and your financial nest egg secure. We will be back next Saturday with something new and interesting just as well. But you got working on those pies and that Thanksgiving stuff. And, if we've got an extra seat at the table, maybe you'll join us. All right, have a great week, and we will catch you next week. Bye-bye now.
The foregoing content reflects the opinions of Medina Law Group, LLC and Private Client Capital Group, LLC, and is subject to change at any time without notice. Content provided herein is for informational purposes only and should not be used or construed as investment or legal advice or a recommendation regarding the purchase or sale of any security or to follow any legal strategy. There is no guarantee that the strategies, statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses, which would reduce returns. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There's no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. We recommend that you consult with a professional dedicated to your needs.